And welcome to the first ever Raising Anchor live broadcast. I feel like we need to bring in a sponsor here, but hello and welcome to the Rhode Island FC podcast, your source for all things Rhode Island FC. I'm your host, Matt Entrikin, coming to you live on this wonderful Thursday evening. First time in the history books, 6:13. RIFC crashes in AutoZone Park after holding a winning position for 90 minutes, only to end up in a dramatic 2-2 draw at the final whistle. This game was full of controversies, from suspicious goals, chaotic red cards, and phantom penalties, and we're here to talk to you all about it and understand what your thoughts on the game were, as far as also just expressing how we are and kind of the post hangover after a lot of mean-spirited tweets last night on what was going on with the game. So joining me is the co-host and now chat moderator, Jason Carey, and he's going to help us relive this nightmare from last night. Jason, how is it going, my friend?
Good. No, we did not plan these shirts. We did not see each other until about an hour ago. Speaking of sponsors, I mean, I've always been more of an O'Reilly's guy, talking about AutoZone. I don't know.
Oh, is that the AutoZone joke? I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So if you had told me last night, did you remember that there was a U.S. men's national team game on top of the RIFC game? Because it completely slipped my mind.
I was checking the score. I was kind of expecting us to get obliterated considering what Colombia did to us, but 1-1. I mean, I didn't watch the game, but that's respectable, I guess. It means we've got to suffer through some more, Greg, Berhalter, but
so U.S. men's national team loses their first game. We lost our game last week. Now both teams tie. Are these two teams' fates tied together?
Somehow linked together, maybe.
At least the Celtics are doing well, right? Like that was the other big fun thing last night. I think multiple people had kind of their phones out. Some people were throwing some shade, and
they're like, "Oh, they're down at halftime by 1 point." I'm like, "It's basketball. That doesn't mean anything. It might as well be tied."
No, it was incredible. I showed up super late, and that was one because I knew I was going to be late, but then two, it was kind of by design because I had made that commitment to Anchors Up, and anyone that asked,
I did buy a beer for Nate.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, listen, I'm so glad, and I must.
No one else kind of took us up on that offer, but
so my son came up to me and told me he was supposed to tell me that he could say Anchors Up, and I said, no, that's not how this works. Now you have to go get me a beer. So it worked out in my favor, but I was really excited with the turnout that we did see. And I mean, no disrespect to any of the fans, but with so much going on a Wednesday in the summer, 8 o'clock at night,
bad.
I thought there might be like 3 people. And there was, I think, one of the largest crowds that have happened, especially for a midweek
in the
Friday
last
game.
month or so. Yeah.
Yeah. Super exciting to see. Let's get into this. But before we do, let's make sure we also set some boundaries on what we are and what we aren't. There's a lot of questions out there about like why we're going live and what's going on in the space. And I want to be really clear up front. There's a lot of excellent work going on with the fan-created, fan-cast side of the new Tide Talk, which congratulations to all of them for coming together. I think it's wonderful what you guys are working on. It's definitely, they're attracting all of the people that want to do something more with this club, have their voices heard, and kind of, create that media sensation. So I'm really excited for them. It's a rebrand from RIFC Nation. So if you're not already listening to them, you absolutely need to go listen to them. The Quahog Corner is also going to be a part of that now. So they're basically doing like, I think 5 shows a week, and we're doing one. There's a bit of a schedule confusion tonight. So we're going to work on that. That's our commitment to those guys as well as to the fans. So
I think it's just because it's a Wednesday game. Usually since we've been doing this we always do Thursday nights. You just don't see us because we don't do it live.
And now maybe they don't want to see us, especially with the way we're dressed today. So moving forward, that is the idea behind this. We may introduce another segment or two. We've got some really great plans, some stuff that was actually created out of some comments from you guys about how we can do our jobs better and how we can be kind of that access or that voice for the fans and kind of using some of the established pathways and connections we have. So in that spirit, we're not the Quahog Corner where you can blow off your lid and say whatever you want. We will have some decorum here. We will moderate. So if you say something that we can't throw up on the chat, we're not going to put it up. And then also if you have a spicy take, we're going to PG-13 it. So just so you know, that doesn't mean you can't say anything or you can't just flood the chat with everything. What's going on, Nate? Anchors Up and RIFC. We got the chain right there, buddy. But that being said, we're always going to be like the PG peacekeepers. If you want to crack open a beer and have some fun tomfoolery after hours. There's a whole dedicated Tide Talk ready for you guys, and that's
what
where
the
those
Quahog
guys
Corner is.
and Quahog Corner. That's where the magic happens. So I just want to preface with that in case someone goes like, why aren't you showing my chat? Well, that's going to be why. I love the chat already. So that also being said, let's get into some of this news, because I think there's been some important things within the league this week, and it all starts with the USL announcing some major multi-year deals. So let's talk through the Spanish parts of that.
Yeah, so USL announces a Spanish language deal with Televisa Univision.
That rolled right
starting June 15th. There's a double header, and then there's going to be up to 20 games for the rest of the season. So they are huge in terms of Spanish language covers. They have Liga MX, and then they also do all the Spanish language covers of like the Champions League, Copa America. So like this is kind of a big deal. Like this is that market penetration that I think maybe MLS really wants, that I don't know if they're really angling for. Hashtag not MLS podcast. But it's good to see that USL is trying to go after these other markets when they say like, we don't need to be those other guys. Like we can find, there's plenty of room within the soccer community in this country to find audiences.
And I think that's so important, because we've said since the beginning, and I think any fan now of Rhode Island FC has made those comments about differentiation, right? Whether it's the pro rail system that I think just about everybody wants, or if it's something else, and this is a pathway towards that. So it's just more masterclass from the league to find those avenues to separate themselves from that other Division 1 thing going on right now. Quick few comments in the chat. Shadow Wolf, who runs the main Hearts of Pine main soccer USL 2 or USL 1 podcast, he just started it up. It's called Fallen Leaves. He's in the chat right now giving some love from Germany. So wow. We've got a German fan. I know that there's Scott
a Welsh fan,
from Wales. So that's fantastic. Brian's in the chat, stoked to see this right now. Thanks, Brian, for the love. I guess the question about this though is beyond this particular deal. There's more in the works for USL when it comes to not just USL Championship now, USL 1 or USL 2, but the USL Super League is now also starting to really kick off, right? Like there's those deals are going live because the league starts in August, and we don't have a club in the rotation yet. Brett Johnson, like, get on it. But in that spirit, like, they've also set up their deal now. They've established themselves as well.
Yeah, so the USL Super League just agreed a multi-year deal with Peacock to stream their games on their platform. I'm pretty sure in the past, didn't Brett Johnson talk about there being potential pathway for RIFC to have a women's team, right?
Oh, so he has, like, without declaring it, and the front office team has said that there is every intent to bring one in. What they won't commit to, I think, is the timeline, right? Yeah. Like, everyone wants that to happen now, but it's hard to argue with. You got Tidewater next year, and then once you've got our main men's team solidified and you've got the stadium, it's really the how do we build on that, and what's the status of the league. If anything, Brett's kind of smart because he's probably already got a ticket to buy a team and expand, but he's going to get to see the league kind of do the harder work of starting to build that before he inserts his team. He gets to experiment, like, on paper before he has to actually do it.
And now there is a dedicated broadcast when they show up.
Yeah. So. Do you think it's a mistake that it's on Peacock and we're not just combining them all with, like, the ESPN Plus? Like, again, because, like, I think of some of the controversy at the beginning of the year where people were saying, like, oh, the games are on ESPN Plus or they're on CBS or Golazo. Do you think this is a misstep?
That's just a problem that soccer fans have. If you follow different leagues, you're just going to have to deal with different subscriptions, and you kind of have to balance those costs depending on where your main objective lies.
Fans, let us know if you love or hate the fact that to watch all of your soccer, not just USL, it requires like 17 broadcasts and 10 pirate streams. Never mind. Jason's speaking from the people here. Speaking of broadcast, let's jump into this game now. So this game, tire fire, dumpster fire, some kind of fire, I don't know. We'll unpack it here, but I would love to understand the broadcast team. Let's start
speaking of broadcasting.
So what did you notice on the night with the broadcast team of the litany of errors that they had?
They're butchering people's names. They kept saying Yayo. He called him Chumassi, and he did, to his credit, he corrected himself afterwards. But I think it was almost every player at some point. He was like, I'm gonna take a botch at this and see what I can do with it.
By the way, Darren says that it's not bad if Peacock has better announcers. I don't know what they use. Like, and that's the thing. We heard in the Discord today, we know that there are some broadcasters that are linked to the team. They are their anchors in that broadcasting space. But we also know that ESPN has this like rotating stable of people. I made the joke online of like they cover everything from collegiate basketball to e-scooter Grand Prix. And I mean, there's a certain truth to that. If they're
e-scooter Grand Prix is amazing.
Well, beyond that, it's also that if they are at least competent to explain the sport, it's really just the difficulty of knowing the nuance of the players, the stats, the color commentary, right? It's beyond the play-by-play. I think a lot of sports commentators could probably get through a game of soccer covering it on like the operation of it, like the execution, but then understanding like the impact of like a player substitution or like what this player brings in their stats. That's missing in this rotation that ESPN has.
The idea the great ones would be able to, off the cuff, be able to announce a sport even if they're not familiar with it, right?
Agreed.
They would probably, the cream rises,
Oh yeah, I can never not think of Macho Man when I hear that line. Brian also loves your posters, by the way, so special call out there. Thank you. Then Carlos says that the broadcast was third world. So I think that's an oxymoron, because I think if you're a third world country, you don't even have broadcasters. It's like a guy with a megaphone.
Considering they're playing on baseball. we're not,
good point.
We're
good
not
point.
far off there, maybe.
Good point. So, I mean, listen, I agree. I think the thing that made me lose it was when, and I know why the broadcaster made this slip, but he called us Las Vegas. But I know why. I know why. At the moment, I was already upset because
I was
he was
confused.
Very pro Memphis. Koke Vegas is on our team.
Oh, okay.
He had been saying Vegas all night. It had come at a moment of controversy for Vegas. So I think that was like a Freudian
It triggered
slip.
that, like, I did a lot of coke in Vegas.
Whoa, we don't say that on the broadcast. What? Come on, PG-13. He meant Coca-Cola for those that are listening, with a straw and maybe a nice couple of ice cubes. I prefer my Coca-Cola in the Mexican glass bottle. And that's where we're going to leave that one.
I'm watching my sugar these days. It's Coke Zero.
We got Brendan saying Viva Road Vegas. I love it. That should be like the team name for when we make the team trip to Vegas from now on. I love it. But hey, listen, let's get serious for a second here. Not a great game, right? Rhode Island FC now has lost 14 points from a winning position. And what makes this one extra worse is that we didn't even get a goal scored against until the 90th minute of this game, right? The objective foul that we'll talk about here in a minute, that was in the 86th minute or 87th minute, but the goal scored wasn't until the 90th minute. And that's problematic that we've now lost 14 points from a winning position. We have that award. There's no other club doing it better than us. So we are really good at not being really good.
And on the opposite end of the spectrum, Memphis now has won 9 points from losing positions in the USL Championship. And, they are the best team at that. Maybe we gave that to them, but, they were already kind of in a good position there with 6 points won, or well, 7. So when you say like bad game, it's tough, because at the time, like, I was actually really frustrated. Like, it's been a while.
You were frustrated at the end though, because I was
frustrated
in the middle
at the result, because the first 86 minutes we're up 2-0. I didn't have any complaints. So, like, I guess when you wrap that all up as a result, not great, but like the first 86 minutes were great. I didn't have any complaints. I don't think any of the players really put a foot wrong. I mean, maybe some could have had better performances per se, but they weren't bad.
So was this a good game despite the ending? Because like Nate's throwing in the chat, Draw Kings again. I don't know if it's the result of Draw Kings, but I don't know if it's the moniker of it, right? Because like for me, for Draw Kings, it's where we didn't do good enough on the night to differentiate. We couldn't hold the game. We just played like garbage, and that was the result. That was the best result we could get. This felt more like a loss, but maybe not a loss of our circumstances,
because we were up 2-0.
Well, not just because we were up. I think there's a lot of controversy in the reffing, which we're going to unpack tonight. We're hoping Seth the ref, which I think I just saw him come into the chat. We've got Seth the ref joining us tonight, so you guys can pepper us with the questions for him at any point, or you can just ask him directly, and I think he'll be engaging with fans tonight, because we wanted him on the pod, but this whole setup is like a box of toothpicks right now. I don't know if this will make it through, to be completely honest. But we need to talk about that. And Nick Cipriani, I think Nick Cipriani, by the way, was the super fan who walked out Rhode Island FC at the Detroit City game. So kudos to Nick for being on tonight to share with us. We will talk about the slipperiness of that six sub a little bit later in the show. I don't want to kind of start there, but I agree with what you're saying on here, Nick, about everything that's going on. But like, despite the end result, I feel like this was a good game. But then when I went back and looked at the stats and I rewatched it very early this morning, you know, this game on the stats side didn't have a lot going for it. We had the lowest possession we've ever had in the history of any game we played, 32%. Where our passing accuracy, the lowest it's ever been, 50. It was in the 50% range at 58.6. I've never seen it that low. And then in terms of like where we didn't do good on those accuracies, we also got outshot 22-7, I believe was the stat on the night. And then what we did win was the things we always win, which I think now going back and listening to last week's pod, you had said if we had a few more tackles, we might be in first place in the tackle index. We had 21 tackles, 17 fouls, the 3 yellows and now 2 reds, which we'll talk about in a minute. I don't know we squeaked something out. We should have had the win, but like also on the general stat line, like this isn't a game that we should be really elevating as the go forward model.
I have some stuff here to kind of maybe I'll challenge that a bit. So when we
by the way, Seth says it was one of our best showings, so we just completely each other.
So like when we talk about the passing, right? So that's fair. It kind of, the team seemed to have a game plan, and that game plan was to get it to JJ, and then to try and bypass that first third to half of the field, and then move up from there. So there was a lot of controls that he was doing his best that he could. When you talk about possession, right? They had a lot of possession, but if you look at the field separated into thirds, all of their possession was in the first 2/3. They only were in our third of the field for 20% of the game. So they couldn't ever get there.
Well, they still had 22 shots though. That's not entirely true.
But true. So 8 of those 22 shots were outside of the box. And there's one that was like wild.
Think about what you just said though. 8 out of the 22. That means that 14 were in the box.
And so 6 of those shots too came after the 80th minute.
Oh, okay.
And on top of that, we had 5 shots on target. For their 22 shots, they only had 6 shots on target. They were just taking shots. So
isn't that something we struggle with? And like Darren, by the way, I agree. We weren't playing for the draw, which was a big difference on this game. We felt it be a difference in the entirety of their game.
I do think we need to take shots, but it's a quantity versus quality. We don't need to just start blasting.
Is that the It's Always Sunny that I started blasting?
Like that's not going to do us any good, because at that point it's just death by 1,000 cuts. At that point, eventually you're going to build up of enough XG from taking 10 shots from out of bounds. But is that really what we want to do? So if you look at the map, our shots, most of them were inside the box, concentrated in better areas. So we took our chances when we had them. We didn't have a lot, but they were much better chances than what they were creating. Because remember, until the 86th minute, we were winning 2-0.
I know it's so tough to have to think back.
You talk about the final result.
Yeah, and I don't want to call a certain fan that's watching us right now that's been very vocal in the chat, but there may have been someone who thought we had this in the bag, and several of the podcasters, because Ryan was there, we all kind of looked at him and we're like, "What are you doing? Right? You never make that claim." So I'm not saying names, but maybe someone in the chat jinxed this. I don't know if he brought on Draw Kings, but maybe not. Shadow Wolf has this really long comment in here, but he's also right. And I don't think that, and we'll get into the Vegas tackle in a minute. There are so many different ways that you could have gone about that from a circumstance perspective. So let's get through the start of this game so that we can get to the end. And that starts with the formation. I saw it all over the place. It was real. Matt knows. I saw this all over in different formations on all the stat sites, FOTMob, like our own USL leagues sites and stuff.
But
this was the return of the 3-5-2, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And so our fullbacks were those wide midfielders. We saw Chumesi slot back into like a right back position. He was phenomenal at it.
Okay, Ken, thank you. Like, I have only seen him be a CDM, a 6 so far.
And it was just kind of like, he's a bench option. It's nothing to be surprised, excited about.
I went back and looked. I don't know that he's ever played center back minutes or right CB minutes, and he was phenomenal.
Yeah, he did really well.
Like, he was very good.
He had the most final third entries on the team.
Like, for your first start, I think that's also the most minutes. He's played, what, maybe 90 minutes total across 14 games. Like, he gets the garbage time almost every time he gets subbed on. So, like, that was phenomenal. I agree. I love that. And then what it did is it allowed Turnbull to have that kind of confidence in the back. He never had to look back. And
they did come back
for defense,
but like he didn't have to.
Yeah. And Chumesi was comfortable connecting with Turnbull. In fact, on the heat maps for the night, which was another indication of, like, sometimes it's like it's really hard to tell despite the result. The heat map was yellow everywhere except for Koke and Chumesi's spot. So a majority of the attack, or at least the start of possession, when it wasn't going long ball to JJ Williams, it was starting from Chumesi. So if there's a silver lining here, besides the fact that we finally strung together a couple of goals for the first time since Sacramento, Chumesi is I want to see more of that now. I think that was a fantastic showing on his part.
Yeah, I hope to see him in the lineup some more. That was really good on.
Were you surprised that Williams got coupled with Doyle with a striker partner pair? Because last game we saw him on the lone island as the one. It was the 4-2-3-1 with Doyle a little bit further back. Did this I mean, Doyle had more shots.
Doyle likes to float. We talked about, like, he likes to kind of weave in and around the wing and then kind of come up on the box. He had actually a pretty good XG contribution on the night. And I think he's slowly been kind of working his way into the team. We saw early in, he had just a few minutes here and there. And then now he started 2 games in a row.
Almost a lock-on start. You get one more in and you're good to go. A couple quick comments. Tim writes in, he looked like a totally different player than we'd ever seen. I'm assuming it was Chumesi you're referring to, Tim. And then the Capo Supreme, Irvin, writes in, it was a great game. The boys showed grit, and I think they did amazing. Unfortunately, the reffing was crap and just didn't go their way. So again, we'll talk about that in a bit. And we do have Seth in here so he can help kind of shed some light on what those instances are. Back to this lineup, though. You told me it was the hope that kills you. Do you stand by that? Do you think that the return of the 3-5-2 was the right decision? Like, is this now, we've seen more goals. We saw a lot more competency, except for some questionable decisions on both our team and the ref. Like, is this the right path moving forward?
I still have the feeling with this team that at some point here in the summer, it'll click. And potentially we'll be able to scrap enough points to sneak into the playoffs. I'm not talking like a home playoff berth at this point, like maybe 7th, 8th place. And I don't think anyone would want to play us. I'm not gonna, at this point, I don't think we've gelled early on enough to talk about like making a big run, but I don't think anyone would want to play us, assuming we can, because 86 minutes of great soccer. We nearly walked out with a win when we didn't think that we were going to, against one of the higher scoring teams in the West, right? They were like, this is not, we look at some of those other games where like we should have taken this, but this was one where we didn't have any business, and we came there with a plan and we executed it like near flawlessly. So I think that we're moving in the right direction.
So and that right
maybe
direction,
that last game was just kind of like a blip.
So then I'll ask this question. Was that right formation, that right direction, Clay Holstead in the left midfielder role? Because now I'm going to move on from calling Clay to Mr. Utility. I'm pretty sure he can play any position that Coach Cano asks him on the pitch. Like, I don't think he can do bad, because again, he didn't shine as bright as if he was that more forward right-sided midfielder that we've seen him where he rips those shots. But like, he completely anchored the line there too.
He had 11 or 13 interceptions on the night.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this guy can do anything wrong.
Yeah, even when he has like an average game, it's better than most other players.
Brendan writes in, like what we brought to the match in confidence, energy, and effort. Our execution still needs to be better, and we need to play smarter. Play to the whistle. Don't commit the stupid penalties. We'll talk about that penalty in a second. I agree with everything you said, Brendan, but I think that penalty is going to be, and again, I'll say it right now. We'll bury it here, but that was a red card. It was onside. As much as I want that to not be the case,
I was so angry because it looked like it was offsides by a mile.
And Seth is in here. So Seth, if you want to jump in and correct us, I know we've got the notes from you from the ref report, but feel free to start throwing in what you want to highlight as what you saw as we walk through this. And then Tim writes in, I want to tie the record at this point. Don't worry, Tim. We're not just going to tie. We're going to crush. We're going to set a new permanent record that can't ever be obtained ever again. So we're on point for that. And then Nate writes in 14 is the number to beat, right? So we just need 24. I don't even want 15. I want 24 on that.
Hey, if it gets us in the playoffs, I'm fine with that.
No complaints, right? And then also to Alves back in the starting 11. I know there's been that, like, is there beef?
Yeah, what's going on with that?
I think we can put that behind us now. So that was good. Red card, Matt writes in, was it dog? So yes, it was absolutely. He was outside the box. If it had been in the box, it would have probably. We'll get into that, guys. We got a format here. Okay, I love all of you. I really do, and I'm super excited to see everyone here. We will get to those questions. Okay, we just have to get through minutes 1 through 86. Okay, one at a time, 1 minute at a time. This is going to be a 27-hour podcast and live stream. So let's get back into the night. We already talked about the shooting problems. It's always good to see that you can win a game, because I'm going to say this game was in ours to win with less XG created at 1.45 compared to Memphis's 1.75, a team that is getting hot with their Brazilian striker core that they have. And we saw it on the night. I mean, let's be honest. Cartega put in a really good shot from that free kick position. Like, they have the talent, and they weren't afraid to shoot from that perspective. But then we only had the 7 shots. I know it's easy to say with our 2 goals, which the Joe Brito one, is that a goal or is that like a football slide footy tackle? I don't know. I haven't seen one of those outside of like 1860s English football when you could drop kick a keeper. But does this team still have a shooting problem on the RIFC side of things?
From this game, I would say no. We had 5 shots on target, 7 shots. I am very happy with the result. Well, not the result, but the performance on the performance on the night. I'd already kind of talked about this part here about the their shots, but I do want to before we move on and forget about it, I did check there in the last pod. We talked about average positions, right? So I went back and checked, and we looked like a team.
We looked like an actual formation.
We all the back 3 line. Everyone was in their spot. It looked as if that was the lineup on the team with just like a little bit of movement.
John Morrissey even called it out. He was breaking down he chose one of these games to be the one that he was breaking down live. And he even noted that with the 5, it reconnected the triangle opportunities to redistribute the ball centrally or out to the wings, something that we've only been able to make singular passes to for the last few games. And so I definitely think that was the unlock.
That back line was very diligent. I actually, when I was doing some of my rewatch, like they kept that line very tight, which maybe in a way kind of invited that pressure because Memphis front line was riding that line, and we saw a decent amount of offside calls, and it worked in their favor. But there was like one spot, later on where maybe our goalkeeper got sent off where it didn't work.
Right. And so let's get into this game a little bit deeper here. I want to talk about JJ Williams because I feel like, this is game 5 or 6 for him. At least game number 4 that he's gotten a start now. He played all of the minutes, which I'll question that substitution or lack of at the end here. But he didn't really have a great night. 0 shots, not even on target for our striker. He was definitely getting beat up out there, whether it was through tactical fouls, physicality with him. I mean, we've talked. He's a big guy. He's going to invite that kind of attack, if you will, as the durable, beat up kind of guy. So he warrants the need to be physical with him because of his commanding size. But like, it looked like it was just a really bad showing of how rough it got for him.
Yeah, and I would argue that he didn't have a bad night. I don't want to make a comparison. in no way, shape, or form comparing talent, but you see Man City employ certain tactics
I love it already.
with Erling Haaland, right? Where he doesn't score and they say he's garbage, except for the fact that he's occupying two center backs, and then like Foden to De Bruyne score 3, and then they still win, and they say, well, he didn't do anything. Well, he had a wrestling match with like 3 other people the entire match to let the other people score. And if you look at like he had what do we got here? He had 29 duels on the night.
Oh, listen, his dual stats and his one-on-ones are incredible. He wins all of them on all those stats. But like at the end of the day, the casual fan, they pay attention to the goal and or the assist. He didn't even get the assist because of the way he flicked on the pass to Connor for his shot in the 18th minute. So like I'm just asking you for in his own head, like is he feeling like he's contributing everything he needs to it? Because Chico was the same way after game 3 where he scored his 3rd goal. He kind of dropped off, but we all saw him moving around, pulling defenders, trying to occupy whatever spaces that it would make sense to advance the attack of Rhode Island FC. Are we now seeing that with JJ because he can't find a way to get into the net?
I think he'll be hard on himself because we didn't get the result on the night. But if we did, I think he would be happy that the team won.
I agree.
And that he's a team player. So he would say, hey, like, hey, my contribution helped the team win. Because they didn't, he'll probably get back and think, well, if I did this differently, maybe I could have put my 1-on-1 and maybe I could have scored, and then we would have been 3, and then we would have been out of sight, you know.
Right. And Tim writes in, JJ should have been subbed after he looked rocked after one of those last hits. I agree. I don't understand why Fuson, who had just been subbed in, was the one that came off at the end to replace for the Lee needing to enter the pitch. I know that obviously Williams is a bigger brute, and so like if you need someone out there, a bigger guy will go farther. But like again, Fuson was fresh legs. Fuson may have wanted to be a little hungrier to try something, and Fuson's still a tall guy. He's a little bit lankier. He doesn't have the mass, but Fuson I feel like could have handled some of that.
Potentially. When I went back and was kind of specifically looking at that last passage of play there, after we had the goalkeeper sent off, Koke, the team was still trying to play tactics-wise the same way. They were still lobbing balls forward to JJ to try and get those, like the chest control, and then to move the field up. And when I went back, I was curious because we think, did we capitulate and give this game up? But that last, what did it end up being, like 15 minutes of play?
Well, it was supposed to be 6, 9, and then it ended up being like a whole nother third.
With the exception of the penalty we'll talk about, like none of our players put a foot wrong. They continued to hold their shape as best as they could. They were down a player, but is it just bad luck at this point? Like, is
it the curse of the Draw Kings? Is that what that is?
I don't know. Did someone put a hex on us or something?
Seth writes in that the reason that we even got the second goal, so JJ uncredited, but still in my mind credited with the Connor volley, and then with the Joe Brito, it was a JJ contribution there that also allowed us to score. So I mean, when I look at it, it's not like he didn't have a bad game. It's just he's not always going to end up on the score sheet, and well, I guess he's never ended up on the score sheet, but sometimes that's how it goes.
Yeah. Speaking of that Joe Brito goal, I love that kind of like not give up on the play attitude. I think there are a few times we see, I don't want to say that the players have like defeatist attitudes, but they kind of, not all of them are spending that extra energy to kind of play to the whistle per se, and I think on the night we saw that from the team. There was a fight and a hunger. I think they probably realized how bad they played in that last game and had to like prove to us, to the coach, to themselves that like they are supposed to be out there.
Agreed. So let's get into the things that matter here, which were those kind of big moments in the game. 18th minute, Connor rips a volley. Love to see him taking those shots. First time, he was in the right place at the right time. I actually give full credit to the entire squad and the mentality they had there. That was a Memphis throw-in that went haywire, caught on the deflection of JJ, who was able to kind of flick it on. And what's really incredible is, and I don't usually see this from the shots attempted, Connor, if he hadn't been able to put that in, would have been able to do something where like a deflect or a redirect from the keeper if he couldn't contain it. That would have allowed Doyle was making the run behind him, and Alves was even coming in on the farthest flank. So like, I don't want to say that, like we already got the ball in, but like you saw the tactics, you saw the implementation of something where it's like, hey, they all were goal hungry. They were all goal.
Yeah, everyone was trying to make a play on the ball.
And you don't see those second and third runs from this team very often. So it was really great to see that.
Yeah, I think Connor actually had a really good game on the night. I think we kind of forget that he came into the squad. He got that red card. Then he was out for a while for an injury. We haven't actually seen a lot of Connor.
Well, we won't see him next week.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. But like in terms of, quote unquote, gelling with the squad, he hasn't actually played as many minutes with the team as as we would like at
Agreed.
this point.
Agreed. What I thought was really interesting, this is an incredible stat that I'd never seen before. Did you know that Rhode Island has only led into of those results? We are won a lot of games where we've actually scored, but to know that of 4 of them were that 1-2-1, like that's incredible.
Yeah, normally when we go up 1, we give up 1, right? And it was like we go up 1, and I was like, okay, cool, we're doing good. And then we get another one, and I was like, okay, we'll probably give up 1 because that's just how it is. But like we either have that give and take, or and hit the limited history that we have. I was thinking, okay, this could be another Las Vegas, right? We go up 2. Well, I mean, that one was back and forth, but still, we were up 2. We'll probably give up 1, and I think we can sneak out of here with the win. But it's not how it ended on the
Not
night.
at all. But let's get into that second goal, because to your point, everything felt like it was moving up. Obviously, 1-0, the game's not put away yet. You want at least one extra goal to kind of create that buffer, create that space. And that came in the 67th minute with Joe Brito, his first goal of the year. But I'm going to ask, was that a goal? Because if you ask Memphis, that wasn't a goal. And we don't have VAR. We don't have any kind of assistant technology when it comes to reffing. I'm going to ask Seth, the ref, was that a goal? And what do you do in those circumstances where it's hard to see and understand? Because I mean, all it takes is like you celebrate, and it's like, what decision do you make? I was talking to you earlier today. There was that incident in the World Cup qualifier between India and Qatar, where the ball went out. India's goalkeeper would let it go because it was completely over the line, and the Qatar player just put his foot over the line, dragged the ball in, and it's like just turned it into the net. And then they all pretended like this was a goal that they had scored. India was dumbfounded because they had all stopped. They didn't hear a whistle, which you play to the whistle, but like on replay, it was there's no lying about that. That ball was completely over the line. So again, here, I still on the replay, I can't see clearly. I see Brito's feet completely through the keeper, and I know that it started with contact, but like, and I'm not robbing Brito on this. It was a goal, but like, it's hard to make that decision that was a goal.
Yeah, and there was definitely some confusion where the broadcast kept showing the replay, and it was like
the broadcast could never show the goals. By the way, the penalty, the second goal, it was
this
terrible.
one, so they didn't have a great angle, but they just kept showing it. And it was like, what are we doing? There's no VAR here. Like, why is this taking so long? And I was like, I don't understand what's going on. I mean, the ball was there to be played for. Sometimes you see refs will kind of protect the keeper in the way that, quarterbacks kind of get protected. You can't challenge them. But, it is a contact sport. If the ball is out in play, like you make a play on it.
Yeah, I don't disagree, and and Seth writes in. So Seth the ref writes in. Yes, it was. Tyler Derrick didn't have possession of it. The AR was the one who signaled that it went in, so it's a goal by those standards. So it's not like it was up to the head ref. And you're right, Seth, as always, being our main ref contact point here, that's the case. It's just one of those things where like you don't normally see that. Like usually you see someone poke the ball away from a keeper and then get it back in. It's been rare where I've seen 2 bodies collide, and like that's like a hockey kind of
goal.
Like, just like
Tyler Derrick kind of put his body in the way there, trying to do everything he could to stop the goal. So
Matt writes in, I think the ball was over the line, but I was wondering if Brito kicked it out of the goalkeeper's hands. I don't disagree with that, Matt. Like, and again, hey, whatever you got to do to get that goal, secure that at least what at the time was a win in our minds. So then moving on, we have to kind of get into the rough stuff here. So we've got our first controversy of that. Was that a goal? That was a goal. Now we get into the 87th minute. A long ball from Koke goes to JJ Williams. And this had been the order of the night. It's why Koke and JJ's passing rates were the worst on the team. It's actually what brought them into the 50th percent quartile.
They had the most connections because
Right.
it was constantly.
It was the
Koke
Jackson
to
Lee
JJ.
long ball special, which I don't think Koke's bad at it. But if Williams can't contain the ball and bring it down reliably, and it wasn't his fault, he just was always with so much pressure applied. It definitely seemed to be not the play out the back approach. And with Chumesi being as good as he was, I don't know why we didn't.
It was working for 86 minutes.
If it ain't broke, right? So the ball goes to Williams. Williams, he's off balance. He feels contact from a Memphis defender, and I think he thinks that the Memphis defender is going to pull him down.
He's pulling his shirt. I went back and watched it. It's not a big tug like where he's ripping it off, but he is pulling his shirt.
But I don't think, especially with the player behind him to the ref, I know the AR could have caught that, but like he didn't get it. The ball ends up getting redistributed, and in two passes, there's a long ball back over, brilliantly timed run from Knight. I mean, we struggle with this, especially with the speed of Karifa Yao. There's definitely some communication opportunities. This was Chumesi's first game. I don't know like what the decision was on it.
They were playing a high line,
but they threaded the needle. Like that is the highest caliber of opportunity you could possibly generate for yourself. It was so good that because of the way the camera angle panned, it looked offsides by like a mile to us. We were screaming offsides because by the time the camera could track, I think Knight had 20 feet on Yao. Like there's no way there's that much space on an onside positioning. Like, but apparently there was.
We don't have that European soccer money, so we can't get the good cameras that can kind of keep in. And maybe part of me just thinks no one in the USL can make a pass that great. But I went back and I just kept pausing it. And I'm like, oh nope, that is a perfect ball.
I almost drew the line and threw it on. I was waiting for someone else to do it. So in the future, if no one does, I'll probably do it myself. But the ball perfectly weighted right over the top. Knight is coming in on goal, and Koke, who fans of this team have had to come to terms in the past with Koke's, I wouldn't say recklessness, but more willingness to come off of his line and engage people outside of the box. Koke does exactly that. He doesn't get a good read on the ball, and remember, he can't use his hands now because he's outside the box. So he tries to position a foot to block it. He gets nowhere close to it and clips Knight, and they crash down to the ground. It's an immediate dog, so it's an immediate red. I think this one's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think this is just the nature of playing the way that this team does. The high line, the sweeper keeper playing out the back. We seem to have two camps. I don't know how big the other camp is, but there is a sizable minority of people who I think would just prefer us to have a typical shot stopper and just want Lee in net and don't like this kind of, fancy new age soccer these kids are playing these days, goalkeepers are passing.
Okay, so listen, here's the thing, and people have been arguing this in the Discord and a little bit of Twitter action as well. The problem is that, yes, Koke plays a high line. Yes, Koke is coming out. Some people were like, why didn't you just stay in the box, try to do what you did last week against Detroit and get a hand on a deflection? Everything's in motion at the time, right?
Yeah.
And I think that whether right or wrong, if Koke knew he may have to commit Dogso, in his eyes, it's like, at least I'm not converting this to a penalty, and I'm only giving them a free kick. Now, Koke didn't have the hindsight to know that free kick would get converted into a goal. But I'm wondering, and I've never been put in that position, but like, what do you do? Like, that you are the last one. You know that you have 2 goals and there's only a couple minutes left. Do you burn yourself?
Yeah.
Do that, or do you just take the shot and hope that you can keep it down?
I'm curious. I'll have to look up. I wonder if there's statistics showing when a one-on-one situation with a striker and keeper, how often that is converted into a goal. Right. So maybe if that is a bad percentage, maybe he thought, hey, it's late enough. I'm going to take the chance and go out there. Worst case scenario, it's outside the box. We have 5 minutes left. I don't want to have I don't want to ruin my goal differential by getting destroyed in Louisville.
I mean, that's to me the decision that I don't understand from Koke is, we lose you from that decision. So it's not like you've just robbed yourself of the end of this game, but you've now taken yourself out of the next game. So for me, it's like, was that worth? If this was a equalizing opportunity or the go ahead goal, I could understand a little bit more. So I don't know. Is that bad discipline? Is that just the natural reaction of a keeper of this style? We need to get acclimated and used to that. I don't personally know. I'm not sure that I loved it. I think it was a very bad decision on his part. And I think that if this is the thing that we start to see more of, like, it needs to get checked in because that wasn't good enough on the night.
I think it's some growing pains with the style that this team plays. If we continue to see this where he becomes a liability, then maybe we need to rethink it. But he was out for a little while too. We're chopping and changing our back line. I think they were really good on the night. This is just one of those things that just kind of is what it is at this point. We need more data to see if this continues to happen in the future, if something needs to be corrected.
Seth writes in, just look up the old MLS penalty shootouts for the listen, Seth, I am the biggest proponent. This is the best way USL can get back into the game, so to speak. You go take the thing that MLS abandoned, and because that's the Americanization part of it, right? You take ProRel, the world structure, and then we just also, instead of ties, we just wins and losses only, no more draw kings, and we go straight to MLS penalty shootouts. I love that idea. So Carlos writes in, Koke red card created a domino effect for the disaster, and it did, because now we lose Koke, although I don't know if we lost him right away. It looked like he was arguing with just about all of the...
He was trying to fight the Memphis fans.
If Scott wasn't doing his own podcast right now, I would go back to the joke he made about the 12 fans and a dog comment, where he couldn't blend in if his life depended on it. In fact, so much so that one of the fans at the Guild pointed out a Rhode Island FC fan in the stands among Memphis, because there was no one else sitting in that section. It could have been someone's parent, could have been someone's family friend. It could have just been a true traveling fan. But Koke tried to stay on the pitch. He got kicked off multiple times, started mouthing off to someone, and so I loved the Spanish heat that was coming off of him for that.
I think our entire team was pretty heated there at the end of the game.
So let's get into this. So to Carlos's point, so it didn't stop with the red card. So Lee subs on. We already kind of commented on the Fuson to Williams swap. I would have kept Fuson in and just given Williams the rest of the night off. He did his job. You're up still. In theory, you've got what at this point? I think it was 9 minutes of added time. Factor in 2 minutes. You got 11 minutes. You got the freshest of legs possible, which maybe is more important. I don't know. I'm not coach.
Hindsight's 2020,
and it's easy to say right now, right? So Lee comes in cold. I don't think he was warming up until that moment.
When you're not expecting your goalkeeper,
right? And what a terrible way to start your first sub in 8 games. You come in off the bench, you're immediately placed into a dangerous free kick, and they score.
Yeah, and Cariaga just puts it in the top right corner. It's just not much you can do there.
Yeah. No, so I was curious, did the wall not jump high enough, or was that just such a perfectly placed shot that there's nothing you can do about that?
I think that's just kind of the freak nature of this game. There's a hex on this team.
So now Lee's lets one in, and which no one will blame Lee on that. And then we get to the next disaster. So in the 99th minute, we're just trying.
It takes forever too for the game to restart after the goal, like 2 minutes. So at this point, they just said 9 minutes. It's like the 92nd. We're like, okay, this game is never going to end.
This is going to be bad. Yeah. So we get into it, and in the 99th minute, Karifa Yao, the tank, the freight train, collides with a player. Oh, actually, wait, hold on. We need to stop. Before we get into that, there was a request earlier, and I almost buried it. We need to talk about, so Brian brought it back up. Brian, thank you for holding us accountable. The suspicious 6th sub. So did you catch that on the collision night when he ran into Koke, he went down? I went back and looked at the collision. He never once hits his head with Koke. They go shoulder to shoulder, and he falls to his back. And I looked to see if he knocked back with his head. I don't see it on the night. So, but he's sitting there, but he's up pretty quick again because they've just converted this dog so opportunity.
Does USL have concussion
Yes.
substitutions?
So Memphis, the problem here was Memphis had already completed all 5 of their substitutions. Now remember, this may not seem like it's that important.
They did say that in the broadcast.
But they are also on a 3-leg stretch across 8 games. So if there are players that they need to swap and rotate, even if it's for 15 minutes, that's a big deal. So Knight comes off to the side, and initially there's no concussion protocol, but you see the trainers start to talk to Knight, and they're giving him instructions. Historically, when you have a concussion issue, you don't move the player. Originally, he was just sitting there, and they were just talking to him. They didn't go through any of the protocols. Knight gets back up. They do the free kick. They score. And then as the game, that's the 2-minute delay. It wasn't just the celebration. It was because the Knight sat back down. Meanwhile, number 2 on their team, I think it was Tulu, starts to get ready to come in. Kano's losing his mind because he knows that they're going for a 6th sub. And that's when you start to see them do the Hail Mary, concussion protocols, follow my finger stuff. It happened within 5 seconds. And suddenly a 6th sub enters the game. Knight comes off.
I thought something was weird was going on there.
Now, I do not want to say that Knight faked it. If he had a legitimate concussion protocol situation, I think it's very important that we recognize that players can get hurt, do get hurt. And if he is truly in some sort of situation, I hope he makes a speedy recovery. But that being said, one, the game management of delaying the game longer, that's a bad look, right? Especially when it's now in that squeaky bum time. But 2, if he didn't really have it, I think there should be a consequence to how concussion protocol is used.
Shouldn't there be a neutral third-party doctor who assesses them? That way he doesn't have any skin in the game, right? And then if he gets bribed, at least then you can go back and there can be some sort of legal action, right? You say, well, we found out there's actually a bunch of payments.
So I don't think that's how it should be. And by the way, good night, Shadow Wolf. One love from Germany.
Good night.
The fake sub for a head injury is what life as a game clips writes in. Yeah, and it was all his leg, by the way. You're absolutely right on it was a collision. He limped around and they needed him off because they knew he was hurt. So they used the sub for the concussion protocol. I really believe that if that's what it takes as a safety protocol, if you use concussion because you're out of subs, it should be like a red card situation where you lose the next game. Seth writes in, and I don't mean the next, like, it's the next regular game you could play and like you have to sit out.
Yeah, you can't play it for health concerns.
So what's interesting here is Seth the ref writes in, according to MLS Next, which I have access to the rules, and I assume it's similar, the sub can come on temporarily until the protocol is done. We never saw that return, whether it was because of the end of time or because like Life is a Game Clips is mentioning it could have just been for another knock, because he did collide pretty quickly and pretty hard with Koke. Game Clips is doubling down. It was fake. It's a false flag operation, guys.
It's conspiracy.
Brendan writes, and he was so concussed he forgot the concussion protocol. Guys, I don't even need to do this show anymore. You guys are in control. But that's a big deal because, again, game management, getting another player in, like, we were down a person at this point. If they had someone hurt because they had used all their subs, that's kind of the risks you play in the game. Some coaches always keep one auxiliary sub
just to the very end because you never know what's going to happen. Yeah.
And I think the concussion protocol, I don't know the MLS Next rules on it. I do know that if you still have your 5th sub, because remember, it's not just 5 subs. You only get 3 windows to sub in unless it's at the halftime. I do believe you can still use the 5th sub wherever if you have it available. So the 6th sub is like when like they used to say like the goalkeeper can be rotated if there's an injury beyond your subs. Like it's all like very convenient tonight for the night on Memphis. But let's get into this. So the 99th minute comes. Freight Train Yao. I'm going to let you tell this story because you watched it more times than I did. Did Krifa Yao cause a penalty?
Potentially.
The answer was no. You had it on a silver platter and you went even keel.
He's moving back as a defender. The attacker is putting his hands on him, and they're kind of like having that jostling wrestling kind of match that players have. And the ref was looking to the side where the player was that made the pass into the box, and by the time he looked, the player was on the ground. Yeah, so I think that's one of those things.
The ref's perspective.
Yeah,
Speak from our vantage point and tell the truth.
I think unfortunately it is a penalty.
Disagree.
I think it's one of those things where the attacking player does get the benefit of the doubt. So even if it is, I personally feel like it's more of a 50-50, but due to the way that the game is called, I think it's a penalty.
I think if both players are grabbing each other, which is what we saw, which is what created the feet collision that spun that player around Yao, I don't think that is a penalty. Seth, we're going to need you to definitely pick a side here for the first time. I don't think we've ever been split like this. But the point is that they're combining together outside the box. They're already grabbing each other, right? And I don't disagree that the ref didn't see that. Like that's all context that would be needed. But the ARs should have been at least kind of paying attention to it to a certain extent, right? When you're running into the box, you make contact and each player is grabbing each other. That's a 50-50. And the other thing that makes it worse, while it's not the context, because it's a foul in the box, it doesn't matter if you're making a play. That ball was never going to get, even if that player had free range, there was too much height on it for that Memphis player to put a head on it. So no, I don't think it's a penalty. I think that's very soft. You had a consideration that maybe earlier in the night that was an overcorrection from when Brito forced his way into the net with the ball between the keeper. And we don't know, like this was all just conversation, right? But I do think that like this was poor gamesmanship management on the ref side. Tim wrote in a minute ago, like, can we get consistent refs? You know, I don't want to see the level of independent concussion evaluators. I don't want to see the level of quality that we continue to see in this league. I think that is never a penalty unless there's contact with the ball. If he's just if they're just rubbing and it's getting late in the game, I don't think that's a penalty ever.
The Memphis 901 podcast, they weren't 100% sure that it's a penalty either.
So that's a problem. That's a big problem. So listen, the goal gets scored, they equalize, the team is crushed completely on all sides, and that's where we're at. So like what?
Yeah, and then next? So after we have everyone, you know, the typical kind of handshakes and stuff, some people are heated, frustrated. And I don't know if everyone caught this. I didn't actually at the moment. I had to go back and watch this, but Connor goes up and says something to the ref and he gets red carded. It's not listed on.
So I found out. So we broke the news right before the podcast started. We confirmed with the league late today. So you heard it first on Raising Anchor. Apparently that's a big deal these days. You got to announce that you did it first. But nice. We did confirm with the league. It was a red card. So Scott from Tide Talk showed it in the Discord. I waited. I literally peppered our IFC, was waiting for their response, went to the league because it wasn't any of the stat keeping books. But the league did confirm it was a red card for foul language.
Dissent?
No, not even dissent. Foul language specifically. Dissent is where you disagree with the call and you get really harsh with like the
I thought commentary. They would kind of lob those together.
Well, listen, hey man, I just read the stat line. It was foul language that came from USL.
Did he say like Memphis barbecue sucks or something?
A couple quick chats. Brendan writes in, all this sub talk is making me hungry. Excellent. Matt says, not a penalty. Both players were grappling. You can't call that off the ball in that spot. I agree with you, Matt. Matt's are smarter than Jason's. We've now just determined that. Darren writes in, if that's a penalty, we should have gotten an earlier penalty, which was correct when JJ Williams earlier did not get the call that went his direction. So I actually thank you, Darren, for bringing that up.
There was even a passage of play where Clay kind of gets pushed off the ball and then he yells at the ref and gets a yellow for it. So ref's not consistent. Like I said, personally, I don't believe it is, but I think that the way the game is called, unfortunately, it's one of those things you just don't want to put yourself in that situation. And you want to try and do your best to defend the position without like putting your hands or taking them down, and hope that Lee is going to back you up and you force them to take the more difficult shot and hopefully they shank it.
Right. 100%. But I now actually probably have to fire Seth the ref. He agreed with you. I would have called it. This is Seth's words, not mine. Yao grabbed his shirt and pulled first, but the same thing was what allowed to happen earlier against JJ.
So then he would have called out. So then
inconsistency.
We would have won 3-2 then.
Perfect. I love it. Darren has the question of the night. So let's have fun with this. Back to the Connor red card. Since we're family friendly here, does this mean we won't speculate on what Connor said? Well, we can speculate, but we have to do it in a way that we tease the word. So Connor is from New York, so that's a start. So it was a combination of UFUC.
I don't know, or maybe I was thinking of there's that guy in the baseball who does the like, you bum kind of
No,
thing.
no, no,
Maybe.
no, no, no. Connor did not do ya bum. He's from New York. He would have 100%. So like something like Bing Bong, and I won't say the rest of it, but no, yeah, I think that Connor has he's very heated. I mean, I really like
A lot of the
Connor, and I
team look
love that he has
frustrated. So
that heated personality. I don't like that he did this because he's now removed an important piece off the board for our next game, and this is his second red card of the season. That is not. I think he may be in the league now. I should have checked that
what's
beforehand.
the ETA on Penny O2?
The July 5th game is the earliest we've heard that he could come back. It could be sooner, but they didn't make any kind of earlier statements than that. So I got to get back into these comments here. Let's see. Carlos says we need to see that list. And Seth also writes it was probably a specific word that is on the list of banned words. So that's the list he's
So they have a
referring to.
list.
So I don't think it's ding dong or bing bong, but we'll find out what it
bad
is.
versions.
A little bit of heat in the discussion here. Brandon writes in, no offense to Seth, the ref, or any of the colleagues, but one of my biggest concerns with professional soccer's future in this country is
Seth
its development
agrees,
of
though.
officials. Yeah, Seth's the first one. He will not publicly, and he knows some of these refs when he makes these reports for us. I think it's fair to say that Seth is the harshest critic of himself, and he wants to see this sport be elevated to a better officiating standard. So I don't think, Brendan, that Seth would disagree. In fact, he wrote, I 100% agree. I should have read further down. Darren writes in, forking shirt balls. I had to read that twice to make sure that I didn't say it the wrong way. So yes, Connor McGlynn said forking shirt balls to the ref and got a 1-game ban for it. I love that. Brendan follows up with, we need to invest more time and money into developing. Oh, I already read that. See, I'm losing track of this chat. You guys are going too fast for me. So listen, at the end of the day, was this the best 86 minutes of soccer we saw? We just couldn't get it to 90 plus.
You just turn it off. 86. Like, that was good.
Do we blame this on, we've talked about this in the past, do we blame this on the game management of the ending minutes? We saw this in Sacramento. We talked about these stat lines earlier in the season, that there's a end of game closing failing problem when it comes to the team, or is this on the night just ref didn't contain and manage this game well?
With that in mind, when I was doing some of my rewatch, I specifically wanted to target like the ending period of the game and say, like, did our tactics fall apart? Were players making really bad decisions? But it's literally those just two like moments that kind of decided the game from there. So going back to this, I feel like the team is moving in the right direction, and at some point we'll get past those dumb mistakes and maybe, like, we can allot ourselves one a game, because nobody's perfect, right? If they were, maybe they would be playing much further up the pyramid. But when you're making multiple dumb mistakes and everyone is doing it, it's causing us to lose, despite how well we played for 86 minutes, when we should have been talking about how this was the best performance and how we're back, baby. Let's go. The cream rises.
Oh yeah. Listen, I don't disagree. I know that plane ride home must have been just terrible today. That just must have been like the worst. Like, knowing you had it in your fingertips and it escaped. There's got to be tremendous pressure on this team now. They're going into Louisville next, which we'll talk about in a second. That's no easy walk in the park. I think this winning solves all your problems in life, like not just soccer. And so they're getting closer. I think that's the silver lining. But I thought we had walked away from bad officiating. I think after the Phoenix game, we made a mental note to, like, unless it was so egregious or Seth found something that was like needed to be called out that was bucking popular opinion, I thought we were past that. And I feel like maybe at the quality of league that we are and the quality of officiating that we receive, maybe we need to think a little bit differently about that. But that also means that this team has to do better to not rely on fouls and calls going their way or against them.
Yeah, maybe it is a learning process for the team too, right? They kind of have to have that in the back of their mind. They're like, hey, these refs are inconsistent, so I need to be very careful about the decisions that I'm going to make, because if they misconstrue that in any way, or I put myself in a bad position to make them have to make that tough call, it's unlikely that they're going to give me the favorable result.
Agreed. So a couple of final questions here. One, Matthew Jean. Matthew number 1, by the way. You've been promoted, Matthew. We do lead the league now in something with Connor leading the league in red cards. So
nice. There we go. Red card FC.
Oh, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Nate agrees
Number one
on the defense part of your statements there. And then Brian giving the love here. Brian, thanks for reminding me how to do my job. And I really mean this from the bottom of my heart. We're new to the YouTube format. We're on all of the different stages right now. We're on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, I think Facebook too. We're not on LinkedIn yet. I didn't want to do LinkedIn.
You can do that?
I can, but I was like, there's no point. But like, we're super high on subscriptions on like Spotify because we've been doing audio for a very long time.
Yeah.
But this video space is very new. I think we only have like 20. I think we have 245 subscribers on each of the platforms. So like rounded up to like a cool 500. We've got 500 Instagram followers now. Twitter's a little behind. We only have like 29 YouTube followers. So the videos will remain and live on YouTube after we're done with the stream. So if you do ever want to watch these and you want to move away from listening and you want to see our faces, which is a completely voluntary choice on your guys' parts, especially with what we're wearing tonight, that's your choice, but that's where YouTube will go. We love and appreciate everything. Always give us a like, subscribe.
So yeah, like, stuff. Comment, and subscribe. Yeah.
We need to start doing those like crazy thumbnails. Like, are we going the wrong way? And like, what's like a red card?
Explosion in the background,
100%.
The crazy faces. And then we need sponsored by like videos where then we
Prime.
In the middle of a video we just stop and start talking about Squarespace.
So we're gonna start. Any last you want us to get? Go ahead and send those to us over the next couple minutes, and then we're gonna start kind of packing this up. But while that starts up, I do want to say that this team is showing spark now, but I'm not bought in. And they've got a long break.
I hope that kills. Yeah,
they've got a long break now to figure this out before they tackle a very difficult opponent. I liked what I saw. It just wasn't good enough on the night. So if we want to think positive and just try to remain in the space, seeing 2 goals on the night, early goals, was good. Seeing us not contain the game was very bad. So Brendan writes in, we're definitely making the progress. Brendan, I agree. It may not be happening as quickly as any of us want. Team management, coaching staff, players, and supporters would like, but we have to remember this is season 1. Do you think we make the playoffs still, Jason?
I think there's still a good possibility that we squeak in. That's maybe depending upon the next, let's say, month. We need to, if with the Draw Kings, we're still picking up points, right? We're, as Tom likes to say, right, we're staying in the picture.
Yeah.
Right. We're there. We're relevant. Maybe not, the exciting playoff teams, but we're in the pack there.
Yeah. Darren writes in, and I'm hoping that they're really angry and play that way. Just no red cards. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Nate loves the stream. Nate, we love you. All right. Again,
thank you,
right
Nate.
Here, buddy. Love you. Wrapping up here. Tim's got a couple. The morale must be bad. They look defeated after the last home game, and then to lose this win. Like, again, I don't know if they're mad at themselves. The loss at home, they were mad at themselves. Maybe they're more. I would have at the moment like put my rage out against the ref. I would have Connor McGlinned it, and I would have done forking shirt balls. I had to think about that again. So like I don't know. And I also, Tim, don't know if RFC has that big of a LinkedIn presence. I think you might be building that up, but we'll start if that's what we need to do. Final ones here. Brendan,
that's how we get Brett Johnson to watch us.
Brendan says we look like Steve McGarrett and Thomas Magnum side by side. So I'm going to tell you guys a fun fact. You won't believe this because, well, that's just how it is. But I'm like 97% sure Tom Selleck, Magnum PI, which is never mind. Thomas Magnum. I read that wrong. I understand the joke now. I thought you were saying Magnum PI, which maybe you weren't, but we're not going there, and you're not going to hear the fun fact.
We'll save that nonsense for another day.
But it's a good joke. Brian writes in, maybe we say screw it and toss Nate in the net against Louisville. Hey, if we can get the third keeper out and he gets team of the week stats, I'm all about it.
The hat trick.
Why not?
All 3 goalkeepers, team of the weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. Why not? And then finally, imagine if we're keeping our powder dry for the playoffs. Well, we got to get into the playoffs first. So I think by
we need to pick
August,
a few more like wins.
Yeah, first week of August, if we're not accelerating on the right uptick, we're not going to be going in the right direction here. So listen, before we get into these events, I do want to kind of tease that announcement we said at the beginning. One of the fun new things we're going to be introducing, you'll start to see it on Discord, is the idea that we're going to be able to start releasing a request for a fan favorite question from the group. So similar to the man of the match, we're going to ask for a sub thread each week, and you guys will be able to ask a question that lets you directly connect with Coach Kano.
Yeah, so this kind of got birthed out of recently. People realized like, oh, hey, these videos are on YouTube. Like, if you look at the views, they're actually very low. I think people didn't realize. And then they're like, wait, is it literally just Jason and Matt asking questions? And then we kind of thought about it. I was like, hey, maybe we can give an opportunity to like get some more thoughts and questions out there. We'll kind of maybe, do we just want to go over this now, or
no, we'll save it for later.
Yeah, we'll bring this up.
Be the next thing we do. So you'll be able to upvote like a man of the match situation. You'll be able to upvote your favorite question, and we will tell Coach, this person, RIFC fan, and your name wants to ask this question, and then he'll be able to ask that question back. So we'll go through the rules. We got a couple of days. We got a whole nother podcast before we get into that. So we're really excited to kind of bring that to you guys. Thanks, Brian. And of course, thanks, Carlos, for it. Let's get out of here.
All right, guys, make sure to check out our friends over the Blazing Musket for all your New England soccer coverage, RFC news at theblazingmusket.com. You can follow us on Twitter, Threads, and TikTok at RIFC Podcast, Instagram at Raising Anchor, and www.raisinganchorpodcast.com.
Anchor's up. I've got an angry dog outside, so I got to go.
We're going to have to lock her up next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.